Before beginning with today's topic, I hope you are aware about the current pandemic of COVID 19. As all of you know, World Health Organization has declared COVID 19 as pandemic disease. As far as pandemic disease is concerned, just to recall what is meaning of pandemic. Pandemic is the word related to place distribution of the disease. So when it affects vast or large geographic area like countries or different continents, we call it as pandemic disease. And right now you are observing the current pandemic of COVID 19. COVID 19 is a disease which is caused by SARS novel coronavirus 2, and it is reported from near about 200 countries. Here I am focusing on the epidemiological distribution of COVID 19, which is pandemic distribution. Based on this, we are going to discuss the another disease which occurred in pandemic fashion in the history. And it was not a single pandemic, or there were not 2 pandemics, 3 pandemics, but total 7 pandemics had been reported to World Health Organization. Can you guess the disease? Yes, you are right. It's cholera. Cholera is the disease where total 7 pandemics reported from the period. So this was near about beginning of 19th century and beginning of 20th century. The exact year is, or exact time period is from 1817 to 1923. Okay, so 1817 to 1923 is the period when total 6 pandemics of cholera had been reported. And out of these 6 pandemics, 5 pandemics were originated from India and Bangladesh. And one more feature which is common to all 6 pandemics is these all 6 pandemics were caused by classical Vibrio. So classical Vibrio is one of the biotype of Vibrio cholerae. What about 7th pandemic? 7th pandemic was reported in the year 1961. But this was not reported from India or Bangladesh, but the spread of 7th pandemic, it started from Indonesia. And this pandemic spread to Asia, it spread to Europe, it spread to America, and it involved near about 28 countries. This pandemic involved 28 countries in the world. And the difference related to previous 6 pandemics and the 7th pandemic. So we said all 6 pandemics of cholera were caused by classical Vibrio, whereas 7th pandemic of cholera was caused by L. tor Vibrio. I repeat, it's L. tor Vibrio. This is one of the differentiation between the 7th pandemic, which began with the new strain of Vibrio or the new biotype of Vibrio cholerae. There are 2 biotypes, classical Vibrio and L. tor Vibrio. Classical both have potential to produce pandemic. Initial 6 pandemics were caused by classical Vibrio, whereas 7th pandemic was caused by L. tor Vibrio. Again in the history, the year 1992 is very important. Why it is important? Because this is the year when one more serotype was introduced in the community, and this is O139. I repeat, it's O139, and currently this is the global circulating strain of Vibrio cholerae. O139, currently circulating strain of Vibrio cholerae. What is cholera? Cholera is toxin-mediated acute diarrheal disease caused by Vibrio cholerae O1 or O139. The spectrum of cholera includes asymptomatic cases, mild cases, or severe cases. A typical case of cholera may present to you with following symptoms. There is sudden onset of profuse, painless, watery diarrhea. Diarrhea is followed by vomiting and dehydration. Patient may complain of muscle cramps and urine output may be reduced. If cholera cases are not treated, then case fatality rate may be high, and this may vary from 30% to 40%. Let's proceed to problem statement. The number of cholera cases which are notified to World Health Organization are in lakhs, but actual estimated incidence is in millions. Now, why the difference is there? The most important cause for the difference is underreporting, and underreporting is related to limitations in the surveillance system. In those areas where surveillance system is not adequate, underreporting will always occur. Let's see statistical data related with occurrence of cholera. In the year 2013, 1,29,060 cases were reported from 47 countries. But the true annual estimated burden of cholera cases, it varies from 1.4 million to 4.3 million cases. In the year 2016, 1,32,121 cases were notified to World Health Organization from 38 countries with 2,420 deaths. True annual estimated burden varies from 1.3 million cases to 4 million cases. What distribution pattern of cholera we can find globally? So globally, in different parts of world, outbreaks of cholera can occur, and these outbreaks are caused mainly by O group 1 and O139. Out of these two, majority of outbreaks which occurs globally, they occur because of O group 1, whereas O139, it is confined to Southeast Asia region. Eltor vibrio, it is mainly confined to Asia and Africa. And in Asia and Africa, this new strain is responsible for producing severe cases of cholera with high case fatality rate. One more factor which is in favor of Vibrio cholerae is global warming. Global warming is favorable for Vibrio cholerae. What are the various areas where outbreaks can occur, or what are the various conditions when outbreaks of cholera are likely to occur? Most important residential areas, it includes slum areas. These can be urban slum areas or these can be peri-urban slum areas. any disastrous condition which can cause disruption of water supply or which can cause disruption of sanitation system can result in outbreak of cholera. The another favorable factors includes overcrowding of people. One more important thing you should know that epidemics of cholera have never arisen from the dead bodies. What is significance of cholera in the socio-economic development of particular area? So cholera is the disease. We can take it as an index of development of particular area. This is the key indicator which is suggestive of lack of development in particular area. Regarding cholera, we are supposed to know what are the various challenges that we are supposed to face globally. One of the most important thing is the strains which are emerging of Vibrio cholerae. They are more virulent. So virulence is the challenge. In addition to virulence, one more important challenge related to Vibrios is their resistance. The Vibrios are capable of developing resistance to antimicrobial agents which are used in the treatment of cholera. I repeat, the challenges regarding cholera is virulence of the microorganisms and their ability to develop drug resistance. What we can say about India? In India, what was the scenario before 7th pandemic? We said that initial 6 pandemics occurred because of classical Vibrio, and the 7th pandemic it occurred because of L-tor Vibrio. Okay, so before introduction of the L-tor in India, the geographic distribution of cholera was different, and once this L-tor has introduced in the India, the geographic distribution pattern has changed entirely. So prior to L-tor introduction in India, cholera was confined to West Bengal, or we can say West Bengal was famous as home of cholera. But since this L-tor Vibrio has introduced in India for the first time, cholera has been reported in other states including Andaman and Nicobar Islands. In addition to this, the new strain L-tor in India, it produced smoldering infection. Meaning of smoldering infection is mild with low case fatality rate. So same we studied for Asia and Africa, where the same strain responsible for producing severe infection with high case fatality rate. But in India, the same strain produced smoldering infection. Prior to introduction of L-tor Vibrio, following various types of fairs and festivals, cholera outbreaks used to occur. But these outbreaks now became rare. Now these outbreaks are rare in India. What serotype of L-tor Vibrio we can find in India currently? The serotype which is found is Ogawa. Biotype is L-tor and serotype is Ogawa. Which areas are there in India from where the cases of cholera are notified? It includes Delhi, it includes Gujarat, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu and West Bengal. In India, in the year 2017, total 494 cholera cases were reported with 3 deaths. Majority of cases were reported from Delhi, Maharashtra, Gujarat, followed by West Bengal and Rajasthan. Cholera can exist in both in epidemic form or in endemic form, and this depends on agent factors and environmental factors. The characteristic features of agent, it includes ability of Vibrio to survive in a given environment. Second factor, it includes virulence of Vibrio cholerae. And third factor, it includes average number of organisms that are required to produce infection. Whereas environmental characteristics, it includes total number of susceptible hosts in a given community. And second most important environmental factor, it includes the environmental conditions, whether they are favorable for transmission of Vibrio cholerae. Example is supply of unsafe water. One more thing to understand, let us imagine a scenario. Say for example, in particular community, cholera is introduced. Now, in that community, whether cholera can emerge as public health problem or not, what thing will decide it is the only factor, that is sanitation. So after introduction of cholera in particular community, if that community is lacking in sanitation, in that area cholera may emerge as public health problem. Let us try to understand the epidemic of cholera. The epidemic of cholera, it starts abruptly. It spreads very fast and definitely it may result in mortality, or cholera epidemic can cause deaths. The epidemic, it reaches its peak level and then you can find it subsides gradually as the force of infection declines. So we call cholera epidemic as self-limiting epidemic. Why this is so? There are two important things related to cholera. When cholera epidemic occurs, large number of subclinical cases occurs in the community, and second, the individuals develop temporary immunity. So as temporary immunity is developed, this cholera epidemic is called as self-limiting epidemic. We said cholera epidemic subsides gradually when the force of infection declines. What is force of infection? Force of infection, it includes two important things. One is water and second one is contacts. Portion in front of arrow you can find, this is known as the tail of epidemic. What this tail of epidemic signifies, if we eliminate the contaminated water source, is it possible to bring an end to the cholera epidemic? What is your answer? Graph is in front of you. No, there is no end immediately to the cholera epidemic. Why this is so? So what you can find is occurrence of tail. So even if we eliminate contaminated sources of water, cholera epidemic won't end immediately. This is because the contacts. Second component of force of infection is contact. So these contacts continue to transmit Vibrio to other susceptible host, resulting in tail of cholera epidemic. Second feature is endemicity of cholera. Endemicity of cholera is not stable. Here you are supposed to remember one more example for the stable endemicity, and it is typhoid fever. Typhoid fever shows stable endemicity, whereas cholera shows unstable endemicity. What do you mean by unstable endemicity. Unstable endemicity is occurrence of this disease will show seasonal fluctuation. Okay, and the fluctuation will occur in different regions in different countries. So what happened in Kolkata previously, cholera was used to occur during summer season, but now cholera cases are reported during autumn from Kolkata. Regarding two biotypes, classical and Eltor, which biotype has more endemic tendency? Classical Vibrio has more tendency to produce outbreaks, whereas Eltor Vibrio has greater tendency to endemicity. Two strains we said, one having tendency for outbreak, that is classical biotype, and one having tendency for endemicity, that is Eltor strain. One more thing to understand is fate of Vibrio during inter-epidemic periods. What happens during inter-epidemic periods? There are three possibilities. First possibility is presence of Vibrios in our environment. Second possibility is presence of long-term carriers in our environment. And third important possibility is continuous transmission. The asymptomatic cases which are present in the community, they will keep transmission of Vibrio. The rate of transmission will be less, but still continuous transmission can occur from asymptomatic cases. Agent factors of cholera. Cholera is caused by Vibrio cholerae, O group 1 or 139. Let us try to understand two more terminologies, that is non-cholera vibrios or non-agglutinating vibrios. These terms are not used nowadays, so what we prefer these as non-O group 1. Non-O group 1 are the Vibrio cholerae which do not agglutinate with O1 or O139. But these non-O group 1 or non-cholera vibrios or non-agglutinating vibrios are capable of producing cholera-like diarrhea. But this is not diagnosed as cholera. For specific diagnosis of cholera, identification of Vibrio cholerae O1 or O139 is essential. Vibrio cholerae has two biotypes. These are classical Vibrio and Eltor Vibrio, and there are three serotypes. These serotypes includes Ogawa, Inaba and Hikojima. Let us try to understand resistance of Vibrio cholerae. Vibrio cholerae, they can be destroyed at 56 degrees Celsius heat within 30 minutes. Vibrio cholerae can be destroyed by boiling, and it requires just few seconds for their destruction. But these Vibrio cholerae are capable of surviving in ice for the period of 4 to 6 weeks or even maybe longer than this period. The disinfectant that we can use for destruction of Vibrio cholerae, it includes Cresol and bleaching powder. From the biotypes classical and Eltor, Eltor biotypes shows more resistance than classical. One more important feature of Vibrio cholerae is production of toxin. Vibrio cholerae, it multiplies in small intestine and it produces exotoxin. This exotoxin is known as enterotoxin. This enterotoxin, it acts locally and it do not show any action on other tissues or other systems. Here, you should be able to recall diphtheria. So, Corynebacterium diphtheria, like Vibrio cholerae, they also produce toxins. But the toxins produced by Corynebacterium diphtheria, they shows local action as well as systemic action. Whereas in cholera, Vibrio cholerae produces exotoxin which shows only local action, which shows action only on lumen of intestine and no other tissues are affected. Let us proceed ahead and try to understand what is reservoir of infection for cholera. The reservoir of infection for cholera includes only human beings. And these human beings can be cases or they can be carriers. In cases, near about 75% cases are asymptomatic. Only 5% cases have severe cholera infection. So cases can be asymptomatic, they can be moderate cases or they can be severe cases. Carriers are also reservoirs for cholera, and these carriers, majority of the cholera carriers are temporary carriers, and these carriers are capable of excreting the vibrios, and bacteriological examination of vibrios which are excreted in feces of cholera carriers, the sample we should take, it is called as purged stool. The sample of purged stool is obtained after administration of magnesium sulfate to the patient. What is infective material? Infective material, it includes stool and vomit of cases as well as carriers. Infective dose of cholera. The infective dose of cholera is very huge and about 10 raised to 11 Vibrio cholerae are required to produce cholera. Period of communicability. For cases, infectious period is 7 to 10 days. For convalescent carrier, infectious period is 2 to 3 weeks. And for chronic carriers, the infectious period may vary from 1 month to 10 years or more. Carriers in cholera. Preclinical or incubatory carriers. Incubatory carriers are those carriers which excrete Vibrio cholerae in feces during incubation period, which varies from 1 to 5 days. Convalescent carriers excrete Vibrio cholerae during the period of convalescence, which varies from 2 to 3 weeks. Contact carriers or healthy carriers. These carriers, they have subclinical infection and the duration of carrier state is less than 10 days, and in these carriers gallbladder is not infected. The last type of carriers are chronic carriers. Duration of chronic carrier stage may remain for more than 10 years, and these are the carriers in which gallbladder is infected. How to detect cholera carriers? Cholera carriers are detected by bacteriological examination of stool. Host factors of cholera. Cholera can affect all age groups. Cholera can be seen in males as well as in females. The most important factor which makes the person susceptible to cholera is the gastric acid secretion. Gastric acid is the effective barrier for Vibrio cholerae. Vibrio cholerae are destroyed at acidic pH. All those individuals in whom gastric acid secretion is reduced make these people susceptible to cholera. So the conditions can be either consumption of antacids or The conditions like hypochlorhydria, achlorhydria can make the individual susceptible for cholera. What is role of community? Whenever the community members come together for the events like marriages, fairs, even it can increase occurrence of cholera if sanitation is not maintained. What about occurrence of cholera and socio-economic status? Incidence of cholera is seen more in low socio-economic status. In host factors, next is immunity. Immunity is always acquired in cholera, and immunity can be acquired after natural infection or after vaccination. So natural infection or an attack of cholera confers immunity, but its exact duration is not known. Whereas after vaccination, immunity is acquired, but this is also temporary immunity and it may last only for 3 to 6 months. Let's proceed towards various environmental factors. Most important environmental factor is poor environmental sanitation, contamination of water, contamination of food. What is role of vectors? As we said, flies or house flies are the important part of our biological environment. These flies can carry vibrios from the dirt, from the filth, or even from human faces if people practices open defecation. So flies can carry vibrios to the food and can contaminate food. Another factor is, as far as hygiene level is concerned, lack of personal hygiene. It is mainly associated with illiteracy, poor quality of life. All these are the factors that are related with the cholera. How cholera is transmitted? It's fecal oral transmission. Okay, so let's start from fecal. Fecal is the vibrios, either O1 or O139, they are excreted in the feces of cases or carriers. From this feces, there is possibility of contamination of drinking water. So whenever fecal contamination of drinking water occurs, there is possibility of transmission of cholera. Second possibility is contamination of foods or drinks. How it can occur? Again, there are two important possibilities. Food may get contaminated after cooking. The cooked food is likely to get contaminated with the contaminated fingers of cases or carriers. And second possibility is when we use contaminated water for washing of fruits or vegetables. One more possibility of transmission is through direct contact. It is related with the severe case of cholera. Severe case of cholera, it has profuse vomiting and diarrhea. So the caretaker, the person who is handling the linen, if adequate appropriate care is not taken and if it is handled with bare hands or if the linens are handled directly, then contamination of fingers can occur and it can transmit cholera. The most important characteristic feature of cholera is diarrhea, which is followed by vomiting. How this Vibrio cholerae produces diarrhea? Let's have a look. So, Vibrio cholerae, they are ingested with contaminated food or contaminated drink. When they reaches to small intestine, there is a protective layer of mucus. Vibrios on reaching to small intestine, they start producing mucinase. This mucinase destroys the protective mucus layer. Now, Vibrios are free to attach to small intestinal epithelial cells. Before attaching, Vibrio starts producing enterotoxin. This enterotoxin, it has two chains. One is light chain and other is heavy chain. With the help of light chain, Vibrio attaches itself to the intestinal epithelium. What is role of heavy chain? Heavy chain, it is mainly responsible for stimulation of adenyl cyclase. Once adenyl cyclase is stimulated, there is increase in cyclic AMP, and this cyclic AMP rise is responsible to drive the fluid into the intestinal lumen from the cells, resulting in profuse diarrhea. Three stages which can be shown by typical case of cholera: stage of evacuation, stage of collapse, and stage of recovery. I repeat, stage of evacuation, stage of collapse, and stage of recovery. Now let's have a look on these stages. Stage of evacuation. In this stage, there is profuse and painless diarrhea. Diarrhea is watery. The characteristic appearance of diarrhea, I think all of you know, right? Rice watery diarrhea. Diarrhea is followed by vomiting. And number of stools that are passed in a day, it may be 40 stools or even more than that. Imagine the scenario: patient is having profuse diarrhea, profuse vomiting, voluminous diarrhea, number of stools are more. So what will happen as a result of this fluid loss? Patient will very soon enter into the next stage, that is stage of collapse. How you can identify this stage? This is the stage where you can find various signs of dehydration in your patient. Patient will have sunken eyes, hollow cheeks, scaphoid abdomen. If you try to take pulse of your patient, peripheral pulses may not be palpated. You may not be able to record blood pressure in your patient, or rather BP falls to such an level that it is not recordable. The most important test that we do in dehydration is skin pinch test. This will take more than 2 seconds, suggestive of loss of skin elasticity. Temperature may fall. Hands and feet of your patient may be cold, suggestive of hypovolemic shock. And sometimes patient may have muscle cramps. All this is suggestive of second stage, that is stage of collapse. And intervention is very important in this stage, and the most important intervention which can save our patient's life is rehydration. If we do not rehydrate at this stage, death can occur, and the cause of death is dehydration or acidosis. Now if intervention is done, if patient is rehydrated, now patient can enter in the third stage, that is stage of recovery. In this stage, what you can find? There are signs of improvement in your patient. Laboratory diagnosis of cholera. What samples we are supposed to collect? The most important sample is the sample of stool. This stool sample can be collected with the help of rectal swab method or rubber catheter method. In rubber catheter method, sterile and lubricated rubber catheter is taken. 4 to 5 centimeter of this rubber catheter is introduced into the rectum, and the sample of feces is collected in a bottle containing transport medium. In rectal swab method, sterile stick is taken. This is first introduced into the transport medium, then it is introduced into the rectum and the swab is taken, and this swab is appropriately packed in the plastic bag. Stool sample collected should be fresh and preferably it should be collected before starting antimicrobial therapy. During an outbreak or epidemic of cholera, if it is suspected that this outbreak occurred due to contamination of water, then water sample should be collected in sterile bottle. In case of foodborne outbreak or epidemic of cholera, suspected food sample should be sent to the laboratory. Transport of stool sample. While transporting stool sample to the laboratory, it is essential to use transport medium. Why this is so? Use of transport medium is essential because transport medium inhibits growth of other microorganisms. The transport media that can be used, it includes Venkatraman Ramakrishnan medium or alkaline peptone water or Carey Blair medium. How Vibrios are identified? Vibrios are identified by different tests. One of the tests is microscopy. Dark field microscopy is used for identification of Vibrios. On dark field microscopy, Vibrios appears like shooting stars. The second diagnostic method for Vibrio cholerae, it includes culture. Stool culture helps in identification of Vibrio cholerae. The other diagnostic methods includes gram staining and hanging drop preparation. In hanging drop preparation, we can observe darting type of motility shown by Vibrio cholerae. Laboratory diagnostic methods further includes identification of the strains, whether it is O group 1 or O139, and identification of Ogawa, Inaba or Hikojima strains. Control of cholera. First step is verification of the diagnosis. It is important to confirm the outbreak as early as possible, and all cases of diarrhea must be investigated even if there is slightest suspicion that these are cases of cholera. For specific diagnosis of cholera, it is important to identify Vibrio cholerae in the stool sample of the patients. Next control measure is notification. Cholera is a notifiable disease. It is notifiable at local level and at national level. It is not mandatory to notify cholera at international level. For notification of cholera cases, it is important to train the health workers in the community so that they can identify and notify cases of cholera immediately to the local health authority. Under international health regulations, cholera is notifiable to World Health Organization, and notification should be done within 24 hours of occurrence. Notification to World Health Organization is a responsibility of national government. The number of cases and deaths are to be reported daily and weekly till the area is declared free of cholera. Next step is early case finding. Aggressive search should be done in the community to identify the cases of cholera. Why it is essential? It is essential because we can initiate prompt treatment. In cholera control, it is essential to establish treatment centers, and these treatment centers must be accessible to the community. Cases of cholera with mild dehydration can be treated at home with oral rehydration fluid. Severe cases of cholera should be transferred to the treatment center or to the hospital because such cases requires intravenous fluid administration. On the way, these severe cases should be given oral rehydration solution. During an outbreak or epidemic of cholera, it is essential to establish treatment centers, and these treatment centers should be established at convenient distance. This is essential because transport of patient for longer distance may be dangerous because it can favor further transmission of cholera. Local school or local building can be converted to temporary treatment center. What should be done in those areas where cholera is endemic and health services are not properly established? In such situations, mobile teams should be established at district levels, and these mobile teams should assist the local health workers. Once treatment centers are established, it is important to initiate prompt treatment. The cholera cases can be treated at home if they have mild dehydration, or they can be treated at treatment centers or at hospitals if they have severe dehydration. The most effective way to treat cholera cases and even to reduce mortality in cholera is rehydration therapy. I repeat, it's rehydration therapy which is very essential in the treatment of cholera, and it is life-saving measure. Depending on degree of dehydration, rehydration can be given orally or it can be given intravenously. Oral rehydration can be given by using fluids which are available at home. Home available fluids like Nimbu Pani, coconut water, or rice kanji, or even plain water can be used for rehydration purpose. For intravenous rehydration, ringer lactate or diarrhea treatment solution or normal saline can be used. In addition to the rehydration therapy, it is essential to give antibiotics to the cholera cases. Since cholera is bacterial infection, administration of antibiotics is essential. Which antibiotics we can use in the treatment of cholera? The antibiotics that can be used in the treatment of cholera, it includes fluoroquinolones. Example of fluoroquinolones further includes ciprofloxacin, ofloxacin or gatifloxacin, etc. The other antibiotics that we can use in treatment of cholera, it includes tetracycline, azithromycin, ampicillin, or even we can use trimethoprim and sulfamethoxazole. The combination of trimethoprim and sulfamethoxazole is known as clotrimoxazole. While treating cholera cases, it is important to rehydrate the cases. Rehydration can be given by oral route or it can be given by intravenous route. Along with rehydration therapy, antibiotics or antimicrobial agents should be given to the cases of cholera. Remember, other medications like antidiarrheals, antiemetics, antispasmodics or cardiotonics or even corticosteroids should not be given to cholera cases. After starting treatment, you must monitor the cases whether they improve or not. If diarrhea persists after 48 hours of treatment, then resistance to antibiotics should be suspected. Next control measure is epidemiological investigations. Epidemiological studies must be undertaken to define the extent of outbreak, identify the modes of transmission. In order to apply more effective and specific control measures, it is important to identify modes of transmission of cholera. During epidemiological investigations, the epidemiologist must maintain contact with health units as well as general public in the particular area where epidemic has occurred. This is essential to ensure detection of new foci of the disease. There are certain institutions where epidemiological teams are available for investigating epidemics. Examples of such institutions include National Institute of Communicable Diseases, All India Institute of Hygiene and Public Health. Sanitation measures. Sanitation measures includes water control, excreta disposal, food sanitation and disinfection. Water control. Water is the most important vehicle of transmission of cholera. Therefore, it is very essential to supply safe water to the community. This safe water supply should be for drinking purpose, washing and cooking facilities also. In emergency situations, in urban areas, properly treated drinking water which contains free residual chlorine should be made available for all families. In emergency situations in rural areas, water can be made safe either by boiling or by chlorination. The long-term control measure includes permanent piped water supply to all households. Next control measure is excreta disposal. It is very essential to provide sanitary latrines and appropriate excreta disposal system. During cholera outbreaks or cholera epidemics, these facilities becomes important. For long-term control of cholera, it is essential to construct the sanitary latrines and simultaneously health education should be given to community members regarding appropriate use of such facilities. Simultaneously, awareness should be created among the people related to dangers associated with open defecation. In addition, emphasis should be given on habit of hand washing with soap and water after defecation. Food sanitation. Food is another vehicle involved in transmission of cholera. Therefore, different measures should be taken to improve food sanitation. Health education should be given to the food handlers regarding cooking of food under hygienic conditions, proper food handling techniques, cleaning and drying of utensils after cooking, and hand sanitation. Next sanitation measure is disinfection. During cholera outbreak or epidemic, concurrent as well as terminal disinfection should be carried out. In concurrent disinfection, the disease agent is destroyed as soon as it is released from the cases. Concurrent disinfection in cholera, it includes disinfection of feces and disinfection of vomitus, linen and clothes. For disinfection, 5% Cresol or bleaching powder can be used. Terminal disinfection includes application of disinfective measures after discharge of patient from the hospital or after death of the patient. Chemoprophylaxis in cholera, it is advised only for household contacts. So these are the family members of the cases of cholera to whom we are supposed to give chemoprophylaxis. The drug of choice for chemoprophylaxis of cholera is tetracycline. 500 milligram twice daily should be given for 3 days to the household contacts of cases. I repeat, drug of choice for cholera chemoprophylaxis is tetracycline. Its dose is 500 milligram twice daily. Duration is for 3 days. Alternatively, we can think of use of other antibiotics, that is doxycycline. Now what about mass chemoprophylaxis? Whether it is advised in cholera or not. Mass chemoprophylaxis, that is administration of antibiotics to the entire community members, it is not advised in cholera. The reason is it is not effective. So remember, chemoprophylaxis, we will give antibiotics only to household contacts and drug of choice is tetracycline. Can we prevent cholera by vaccination? Answer to this question is yes, but already we have discussed immunity acquired after vaccination is temporary and it may last only for short period. Which vaccines are available? Two types of vaccines are available for prevention of cholera. One is Dukoral and second is Sancol. Both these vaccines are given by oral route. Other vaccines that can be given by oral route. Examples of vaccines that are given by oral route, it includes oral polio vaccine, it includes rotavirus vaccine against diarrhea, and it includes TY21A vaccine. This is oral typhoid vaccine. The diseases cholera, typhoid, acute diarrhea, poliomyelitis, where oral vaccines are available. Dukoral vaccine. Dukoral oral cholera vaccine, it is monovalent vaccine. When we say monovalent, it includes only Vibrio cholerae O1. But in O1, it includes both classical as well as Eltar Vibrio, and it includes two serotypes, Ogawa and Inaba. This is recombinant vaccine. This vaccine is not recommended below the age of 2 years. So we can start it after the age of 2 years. 2 oral doses should be given and booster dose should be given at the interval of 2 years. So 2 doses, booster dose after 2 years of last dose, and not recommended below the age of 2 years. Sancol. Sancol is bivalent vaccine. So in monovalent we said it includes only O1, Vibrio cholerae O1. So bivalent will include both O1 as well as O139. Number of doses are same, 2 doses, 2 weeks apart, and booster dose after 2 years. Next control measure is health education. Health education should be directed towards early reporting of the cases, oral rehydration therapy, construction and utilization of sanitary latrines, food hygiene and hand washing, specifically after defecation and before eating. In addition, people should be educated about benefits of consumption of safe water and cooked and hot food. National Cholera Control Program. Now, this program is called as Diarrheal Diseases Control Program. This program focuses management of all cases of diarrhea by rehydration therapy. And rehydration therapy can be given orally or can be given intravenously depending upon dehydration. This program also focuses on promotion of breastfeeding and improvement in maternal nutrition and child nutrition.